We're just gonna start. If I could just get a slide. All right, so like what's going on in the world, right? That's where we should all start. If we could get the next slide, please. All right, pop quiz again. Like where are things trading? Like shout things out. Anyone? Does anyone know where anything is trading?
0.16 at the 0.016 at the base.
Okay, is that right? $10.50? 18 cents. 80 cents. Okay. Where's Bitcoin? Anyone know where Bitcoin is?
Last I checked was like 650.
All right, so there's no way Ether can be at 0.016, Bitcoin's 654, and like 1075, I don't think. No, like in the last 20 minutes. Does anyone have a live Ether price? Okay, 0.0164. That sounds a lot better. It's a 3% difference, guys. So let's do them well. Capital markets. What's going on in capital markets? Anyone know where like S&P 500 is?
Haven't checked.
Highest since 2015.
Highest of like all time, almost. Yeah, very nice. Like 7 points, like 0.3% from all-time highs, right? Like that should be probably bearish crypto, but it hasn't been really moving with it lately. So I don't know. It matters when it matters. It doesn't when it doesn't. Was Brexit bullish or bearish? What do we think?
Bullish? If I was in the UK, I would get up.
What time frame?
Just like Brexit happened, right? Everyone was surprised Brexit happened. Would you call it bullish or bearish for crypto? I guess, I don't know. I think really unclear. Like, you know, we're going to look at it, but like, you know, Bitcoin went up a little bit and then down a bunch and then up a bunch. And it's kind of been all over the place. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so remember the big thing to keep in your mind all the time. Do you feel comfortable to buy if we go lower or sell if we go higher? Like, hopefully we're not all feeling stressed by the way things have gone, you know, this week or last week or whatever the week is. Like, we're all in control. And then still make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew. That's the trick to avoiding the previous point. Can you get the next slide, please? All right, so last time I was in, right? This is where we were. We're talking about like buying capitulation and such, right? We get the next slide, please. And then that was the ramp, right? And the crazy thing was, if you look, that all happened in one day, right? That was the post-DAO like rally for no real reason, where we rallied, you know, like 50% in 24 hours, right? We get the next slide, please. All right, so let's do a little recap, right? Remember last time I was here, like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm long Bitcoin. I don't want to be long for the halving, but like I want to buy some Bitcoin here, right? So I averaged in at 610. If we get the next slide. I sold over there at like 690, just scalped it, like 12% onto the next one. I don't care. I don't feel that good about the trade because I don't feel that compelled about Bitcoin, so I just like move on. I don't really see much right now in the chart. Like it's all just chopping around. And usually when that happens, I don't feel like that compelled to go one way or the other. We get the next. So yeah, like we're talking about capitulations at the lows, things when they can't sell off, and liquidity testing. And we're going to get good examples of those things that have all happened in like the last 2 or 3 days of what's going on. So we get the next slide. All right, so does anyone here see any capitulation in this chart?
Yeah, there's 2 capitulations there, isn't there?
There are 2 capitulations there. Does everyone like agree with that? Right, like some way where you see a huge amount of volume, like you could quantify it however you want. Maybe like 4 times as much volume than like any 1 hour over the previous 24 hours at the very lows, right? So like, if you look over here, right, like that total amount of volume was way more than all this volume over here at the lows. And then this one over here followed like the same thing. And I looked through all of Ethereum and we've never, like every single time that we've had a capitulation this year, we've rallied. We've never had like 2 of them. So you guys think this would make me bullish or bearish Ether?
Bullish.
What did anyone else think anything?
What was the question?
Would this make me, you think, bullish or bearish Ether here? Ether Bitcoin is the chart of this, but.
Well, it's never happened twice in a row like that. I'd be a little wary.
So it's actually the opposite for me. Like I'm extra confident. Like it's like it happened and then like it happened again, and to me it's like a squared function. Like this is like the best setup I've seen. Just it's the kind of thing where I'm gonna keep on going with it until like I hit my stop, right? Is just how I'm going about it. Like maybe you're right? Like maybe it's just because it's different than the other ones that means like the pattern is off. But like at least for me, I couldn't imagine like us having another like capitulation breakdown again. I feel like everyone's capitulated, everyone's nervous, and like, you know, if everyone around here is like feeling somewhat like, oh, you know, I'm a little bit nervous, like that is to me like a very bullish thing, because it means like probably enough people don't have it. I don't know, that's just how I've come to feel in markets. Will you get the next slide, please? So I did a little update because the price went up like 8% overnight. I guess you can't fully see it over there, but between like the last slide, you know, it's just to me like I made this whole thing last night and then 10 hours later the price moves 10%. Like Ether is the kind of thing where if you're not paying attention every hour, you're off by 3%. So if you're actively trying to manage risk in this thing, like you really have to pay attention, and you can't be very like lackadaisical about it. Unless you have like stops set and it's like a very like automated plan and you've done like all your homework and you're like, this is where I'll stop out, this is where I'm gonna take profit and whatnot. But I personally believe things change so quick in this, and like, you know, right now I'm long Ether. A lot of people ask me where am I gonna wanna sell Ether? Like, I don't know. It all depends how quickly we rally. It all depends how much, you know, how long it takes, how painful the pullbacks are. Like that whole story is evolving quick enough where I can't set anything in stone in like an order. If we could get the next slide. All right, yeah, so back to that capitulation. It's kind of funny, right? Like June 18 there, like look where we kind of bottomed, right? That was about like 0.0135. Does anyone know where we last bottomed in that last capitulation? Where? 138. Yeah, that's about right. It's actually like 1410, but like full credit for you. Yeah. Could we get another chart? Yeah, and then if you look at this rally here, right? Here's an interesting thing I figured out last night. So that was June 18 that we had that, you know, low, right? We didn't go up until June 21. So there was like 3 days of like awkward pain where people were like getting very frustrated. Nothing was really happening. You know, like Ether is dead, whatever it is. So the interesting thing to me is today is day 3 of the last low we had. So that's just like some random pattern that actually really wouldn't surprise me if it was right. So the way I'm gonna go about it is like, you know, I got it at the low, I'm up like maybe 10% on the trade. If we start really going, I'm gonna be I'm gonna hold on to it more, but unless we start going today or like tomorrow, because I feel like I can manage risk pretty well over a weekend. Like things just move slower than during the week. Things are a lot more gradual, I would say. If we don't really start getting going today or tomorrow, I'm going to start taking more profit. And if we start trading this pattern, and it would not surprise me at all over like the next, maybe this takes 3 days this time, like some kind of rally at some top and then a little bit down and then a grind down and then like some super ramp. I would bet like right now I would make you a solid bet that like this probably happens over like the next 4 days. I don't know, just my guess. And I'm trading it by like having a stop right now, right? Like if we get back to the level I bought it at, I'll just get out and call it a day. And it's like if I miss, like I'm wrong on the rally and then I'm wrong on the speed of it and then it goes down way quicker than like I thought it would and I can just get out at flat, I'm like, okay, I was wrong enough where I'm just gonna eat crow and call it a day. But yeah, like this is what I'm really looking for right now in Ether. And I think like it could really rally again much quicker than people think, because I feel that's been the story of the year. It's Ether rallying or selling off much quicker than people think. We get the next slide. So yeah, it's always good in my mind to keep this capitulation fractal, right? Like you could imagine, like I was saying last time for anyone that wasn't here, you could imagine if you were short this thing and then it traded like this, right? And the Dow crash took 40 hours from top to bottom before you were done. Imagine if you're in 40 hours and you were long and it was a chart like that and it traded like that. By the end of it, you're so frustrated, you just gotta sell it because you're like, I can't handle losing anymore, and that's how these capitulations happen, and that's usually a really good entry. So I think everyone would, if you're not really sure how to trade and you're worried about like going wrong, like buying a small amount, like a very amount that you're very comfortable with, where you could sell if it went higher or buy if it went lower, on a capitulation is like just a very good start, in my opinion, of like how to put the proper bumper cars around you where like you really won't like, you know, brutalize your account and burn all your money on like one trade. Yeah, things I like to, things when I like to sell. Like if we really follow that line, right, and we're up like 50% over the weekend again in Ether, right, like I will feel way too satisfied. Like I'm not trying to get 65%. Like maybe I'll do it at 40%. Like taking it when it's there, if that was your plan, right? Maybe you're like buy and hold forever and you have like your funds all organized in like a well done way where, you're comfortable with it no matter what it does. Like that's completely different. But if you're in this for like the trading aspect, and you want to trade it, then you have to take profit when things go up, especially when they go up, in my opinion, faster than when they grind up. I find that's like just some tell I've found so far this year in Ether. And then the other one is when I have to maintain flexibility. Like that Bitcoin trade. The reason I got out of it was because I just wasn't sure, I was up some profit, and I'll feel way better if I could buy it on a dip, and I'll feel way better if I could short it on a rally. And I'll just like go from there, and I'm really not sure, and when you're not sure, it's always good to take a risk off. Totally fine, it means you did nothing wrong. And like sometimes, it tricks me. Like, how we were flat for those 3 days before we really started going? Would have been totally reasonable if I cut my position in half, because I was like, things didn't happen as quick as I thought, so now I should cut it in half. And you miss some, and that's totally fine. And like, that's just how it goes sometimes. But you should never really feel bad if you're less confident and you just cut some of your position down some. Totally a reasonable thing. All right, next slide, please. Here's the Dow. What do you guys think? Like, has Dow been doing a lot, not doing a lot?
How do you get a candlestick down?
It's called a Dow hack, where someone's stealing all the money, and you see it going across the screen. Yeah.
That candle, it just got devoured. That was crazy.
It was a fun, crazy, silly chart. What do you guys think? Does that look like an exciting chart? A lot going on in Dow?
Boring shot.
Yeah, pretty boring chart, right? It's like in a very, very tight range. But a lot of things are going on in the actual what's going on with the Dow. Like, where are we with soft fork, hard fork, no fork? Anyone have any idea what's going on in the Dow?
Soft fork has the prospect.
Yeah, so a soft fork, yay or nay, would you say? Okay. All right, there you go. But just for soft forks, it seems like even if we wanted to do it, right, we probably couldn't, because people are going to be able to spam the miners with transactions, and then the miners are not going to be able to make any money, so they're not going to want to run that soft fork. So to me, that's a huge deal, right? Because up until we figured that out, I always thought the trade was no fork, the Dow is worth nothing, because everyone's just going to be stealing all the money in like some really nasty purge, right? They do a soft fork and they can freeze everything and no one can touch that money, then 70 cents on that one Ether is locked up, right? Because the guy was able to steal 30% and then 70% he didn't, and I thought the soft fork, the way it seemed, was it was going to lock everything up, and then, that made buying the Dow at 50 cents on the dollar on the Ether, to me, it was a made sense trade, because I was like, okay, they'll probably do the soft fork, even if we don't do the hard fork and the guy is able to not return the money, then buying it at 0.5 versus, I'll get 0.7 on the soft fork, good trade. But now it's kind of like the Wild West, because it's either like they do the hard fork and everyone gets all their money returned, or no fork and see you later, all that Dow. So it's just something very worth thinking about, right? So even though you have a chart that looks completely boring and flat and nothing's really going on, like all the dynamics of that are quickly changing. And that really matters for like your plan. Like I had some Dow and then I sold some Dow at like 0.76 because I just don't want to, I'm less confident now that I have like they're not going to be able to do the soft fork. So I'm not on the lower bound of my 70 cents on the Ether. So it's always important to be keeping up with what's going on, especially like if you're in the trade. Because a lot of times, like, who knows what drives Ether, right? A lot of things are all going on in the world and it's like a big petri dish and all kinds of things are going on. But every now and then, when you have quantifiable things that actually drive it, like this Dow situation and the soft fork, it's really important to pay attention to those things. All right, so that's all the slides I got for you guys. And I'd love to do like Q&A now.
With cryptocurrency, do you trade off information or off the charts?
I mostly trade off of like, I have like my basic rules, like trying to buy capitulation, not chasing things as they go up, taking profit and things like that. So that's governed a lot by the charts, right? Like how quickly things rally, how aggressively down the capitulation is at the lows. And at the same time, though, like sometimes we'll have news. Like, say that there's like, you know, like a huge press release where Ether is declared like the new Bitcoin by everyone in the world, right? And the price of Bitcoin and the price of Ether just rallies like 10%, and then it comes all the way back down and like stays flat. Would you guys say that's like a good thing going on or a bad thing? Difficult question. I wouldn't. Anyone have any like opinions on that? Like, how would you feel as like an Ether holder if Ether had like this great event happen, and then the price went up 10%, and then it immediately went down, and then it stayed flat for 3 days?
I mean, I've seen it trades less on information, more just on trends. Like once it gets going, it takes off.
Right, but like what does that mean, right? How do we go about quantifying that? Once it gets going, it takes off. I'm gonna be like, oh, it's getting going. I better buy it now. Oh, I bought high, right? Like, you gotta try to come up with some way that protects you from doing that, because we can't chase Ether, because that's how we always get burned. It's just what I've personally found. So I find in general, when you have really good news and things can't rally, then that's really, really bad. And you wanna like cut down your risk. And on the same time, when you have really, really bad news and things can't go down, then that's really, really good. So on that DAO hack, before the DAO hack, when like Vlad and Dino and Goon wrote that paper about like the vulnerabilities, like I knew that like people were about to like, you know, people were gonna write some paper because there were these vulnerabilities, and I knew that like people were going to challenge the status quo of like, you know, Slockit saying everything is completely fine, right? And I knew that like they were starting to talk about like things, and eventually someone was gonna write it up and make it concise and circulate it, right? Because that's way too big of a problem, and like everyone in Reddit has no idea because they're not reading all the code and like working on this thing, right? So the actual low, and I bought the low before like they released that paper, because the thing had a big capitulation moment and it couldn't really go any lower, and someone was trying to unload a huge amount of volume at the lows, and people were just gobbling it right up. So like, you know, like clearly people knew, or someone knew that like, you know, we should be worried about the DAO, and people were panic selling, and I guess that's like news. But the fact that like it reached some low where it couldn't go lower, no matter how much, someone could have sold as much as they wanted, and like the price wouldn't go lower, and there was an unbelievable amount of liquidity, said like to me we had a low.
What happened with the Bitcoin halving?
Oh, the halving, yeah. So everyone is super bullish the halving except for me, because in general, when all you and all your friends are convinced that like a trade is great, and you can't find anyone that thinks it's a bad trade, usually everyone is going to lose.
What time frame?
Just short term. I mean, I don't know. Until I think we're going to probably get some dip, and then we're going to probably go up a bunch once everyone's broken. But I think like I wouldn't want to pile into that, right? Bitcoin's up like 70% this year. Now a little bit less, but roughly, right? We started the year at 380 on Jan 1. So like, I think a very good time to take your profit, especially with everybody looking for this halving thing. I mean, the way I see it is everyone is in this, and they're like, you have to be long for the halving. So unless it immediately goes up, people are going to say, oh, like I need to get out, like I'm worried now, I'm panicked.
Reddit's really
I mean,
negative.
like, look at what happened at Homestead. Literally.
So like Homestead's a so if I remember right, Homestead's the day like the news came out, and then after that Ether went like lower for a while, or?
Went down 35%.
Okay, right. But like if you remember, that wasn't when Homestead came out. That was like 3 days later. So Ether actually stayed flat for like a short amount of time before it went lower. And I said, wow, we have this great news and the thing can't go up. Probably a good time to like take some position off. So that's how I try to use Catalyst to try to gauge information.
On Reddit, everyone's real negative about the Bitcoin halving.
Really?
Yeah, if you look at those, like, if you look at the comments and stuff, everyone seems to be like, oh, I bought all I want to buy, really nervous.
Well, if they bought all they want to buy and they're really nervous, it sounds like they're really bullish because they have a bunch, right? There's a difference between what people feel and what people have, right? So like if the dude is long a bunch of Bitcoin and he feels really concerned and like pessimistic because like it makes him feel better to be that way, but at the end of the day he bought all these Bitcoins, and like he counts in team, I think we're gonna go up no matter what he's saying. What matters is what he's doing, right? Anyone else have anything on their mind for what they're thinking about?
Have you been, is there anything going on with Doge?
Nah, I played that game after the Jamaican bobsled team. That's when I called it a day. That was it for Doge.
Leading up to DevCon, how do you feel that Ether will perform? Because last time even Microsoft news didn't really pump it that much. But there is a lot more exposure, like publicly about Ethereum now. So I'm like, kind of like, well, I'm a believer in only when the ecosystem actually has stuff to use. But then you have this public perception about it being like the next Bitcoin.
It's really tricky, right? Because I mean, if you imagine DevCon last year, like Ether to me was almost the equivalent of like another coin. Like the story of Ether was the story of all altcoins, which is like, it has some kind of IPO and then it goes down for a while and everyone every day loses like 0.5% and they're like super frustrated and they all give up and they all sell, except for like the hard believers who held on and then, you know, they 20x'd all their money, right? So like, to me, it's like a whole different world now. Like that was some environment where like, the thing going on was shake everyone out and only like the true believers hold on. And now we're in this world where like there's a lot more believers, right? Like the price is up so much there has to be way more believers. So it's gonna probably be hard for me to imagine comparing the two. But at the same time, if all this great news comes out in DevCon and then the price can't go up, then like I probably will not want to be long. A lot of times too, you could, like a trade idea is you could just be long into DevCon, see what comes out. It'll probably be something exciting. And if it's something exciting and the thing doesn't go up for 2 days, then you get out.
About Zcash.
I love Zcash. Yeah, I'm super excited about Zcash. I think, I mean, the way I think about Bitcoin fundamentally is much different than Ether. I think like cryptocurrency tries to accomplish two things. There's gold type things, like people want a safe haven store of their money. And Bitcoin gives them that, and they don't care about the technology or smart contracts or anything. And then there's the people who care about the technology, and they care about, you know, burning the gas to be able to do great things on an Ethereum virtual machine. And those are not necessarily the same players. And I think Zcash is just going to be a better Bitcoin because it's just going to be anonymous. You know, it's like if I'm in Bitcoin because I want it as like a gold store of value, and now I can have an even more anonymous Bitcoin, then like I would imagine all those people would want Zcash more than Bitcoin. Right? That's just my personal bias of how I'm thinking about these things.
Somebody going to fork Zcash, get rid of the 20% haircut and change the proof of work?
That question is way above my pay grade. I have no idea.
You're going to know this shit if you're going to trade it. What's your analysis, current analysis of Casper?
Casper? I mean, my thoughts are just, you know, like Vlad is my good friend and he really appreciates like something like a formal verification or something that can really be, you know, honed in and done in like a very, very clean way. And it seems to me like I don't know enough about it, you know, I don't know enough about computer science to say that's like the proper choice, but my intuition is like that's probably correct. And yeah, I mean, I think
Economics and game theory, you should check that out.
for proof of stake or Casper.
The formal verification aspect.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of proof of stake in that, like, I think if they can do it properly, the way I think in terms of mining and cryptocurrency is like the real scary things are when the miners gain like autonomy and they start doing scary things because they have to stay in business, right? If you're able to do proof of stake in something where you just have locked up deposits and you can really control exactly what the miners are doing, then you can really get rid of that whole dimension. And you can eliminate like miners, you know, about to go out of business, so they form like a cartel to start manipulating things so they can make more money.